When we talk about the history of Islam in Belgium, we're looking at a story that's relatively new, especially compared to countries with a deep-rooted Islamic past. But even though Islam's presence in Belgium doesn't stretch back centuries, it's a story deeply intertwined with the country's post-war transformation, waves of migration, and the rise of multiculturalism in modern Europe. In the early periods, during the Middle Ages and into the early modern era, there was no real Muslim presence in Belgium. Any interaction with the Islamic world came indirectly, mostly through trade routes, diplomatic relations, or broader European connections, like those involving the Ottoman Empire or during the time of the Crusades. But as far as an actual Muslim population living in Belgium, that simply didn't exist before the 20th century. Things began to change dramatically after World War II. Belgium, like much of Europe, was in desperate need of labor to rebuild its economy. The coal mines, construction sites, and factories were calling for workers. And to fill that gap, Belgium signed a series of labor agreements with countries like Italy in 1946, then later with Spain and Greece in 1956, and crucially with Morocco and Turkey in 1964. These last two agreements would mark a turning point. Many of the workers who arrived from Morocco and Turkey were Muslim. They came under temporary contracts, expected to work, send money home, and eventually return. But what actually happened was different. Over time, many of these workers chose to settle. They brought their families over, they laid down roots, and in doing so, they began to form the very first permanent Muslim communities in Belgium. It was the beginning of a social and cultural shift that would quietly grow over the decades. By the 1970s and into the 1990s, the presence of Islam in Belgium wasn't just about workers and labor. It became about communities. Informal prayer spaces began to pop up in cities like Brussels, Antwerp, Liège, and Charleroi. These evolved into mosques, some small and tucked away, others more prominent. A major milestone came in 1967 when the Islamic and Cultural Center of Belgium was established in Brussels with support from Saudi Arabia. This would later play a key role in shaping Islamic life in the country. Then in 1974, a major recognition took place. The Belgian state officially recognized Islam as a religion. That put it on the same legal footing as Catholicism or Judaism. With that recognition came access to state funding for imams, religious teachers, and cultural institutions. It was a significant moment not just symbolically, but practically, as it allowed Muslim communities to build stronger foundations and be more formally included in Belgian society. Fast forward to the 1990s and beyond, and we see the demographic and cultural landscape continuing to evolve. Thanks to family reunification policies, natural population growth, and continued migration, the number of Muslims in Belgium grew steadily. Today, it's estimated that Muslims make up around 5 to 7% of the population, and the presence is most visible in urban centers, especially in Brussels, which has one of the highest proportions of Muslims of any European capital. Alongside this growth came efforts toward integration, identity, and self-expression. Islamic religious classes are now available in public schools, and Muslim youth have created their own associations, sports clubs, and cultural centers. Halal businesses thrive in many neighborhoods. At the same time, many Muslims have stepped into roles in politics, education, and the media, challenging stereotypes and helping shape the national conversation. Of course, with visibility also came challenges. Issues like secularism, the hijab, Islamophobia, and radicalization became hot-button topics, especially following events like the 2016 Brussels attacks. The conversation around what it means to be Muslim and Belgian at the same time has never been more relevant. So when we look back, we can trace Islam's presence in Belgium through a clear arc, from a complete absence before the 20th century, to the arrival of guest workers in the mid-1900s, to the recognition of Islam as a state religion, and finally to the present day, where Muslim communities are a vibrant, visible, and growing part of Belgian life, navigating both opportunities and challenges in a rapidly changing society. When we talk about the number of Muslims in Belgium today, it's important to recognize that there's no official government record keeping track of religious affiliation. Belgium doesn't collect religious data in its national census, which makes it difficult to pinpoint an exact number. But based on various surveys and demographic studies, most estimates suggest that Muslims make up somewhere between 4% and 7.6% of the total population. That may not seem like much at first glance, but in a country of over 11 million people, That's a significant, invisible community. Now, when we look a bit deeper into the makeup of that Muslim population, one thing stands out: the overwhelming majority are Sunni Muslims. That's consistent with the countries from which many of Belgium's Muslim residents or their families originally came, places like Morocco and Turkey, where Sunni Islam is the dominant branch. According to estimates, about 90% of Muslims in Belgium follow Sunni traditions, while approximately 10% identify as Shia. Again, these numbers aren't exact. They're based on available research and community data, but they help paint a clearer picture of the religious diversity within Belgium's Muslim population. It's also worth noting just how diverse this community really is. While Moroccans and Turks make up the most prominent groups, and in many ways laid the foundation of Islam in Belgium, today's Muslim population is much broader. Over the years, migrants and asylum seekers from Algeria, Tunisia, Pakistan, Syria, and even sub-Saharan Africa have added new layers to the community. That means there are differences not just in religious interpretation, but also in culture, language, traditions, and daily life. So even though we often refer to the Muslim population as a single group, it's actually made up of many different communities, each with its own story, identity, and connection to Islam. And this diversity is one of the things that continues to shape the evolving Muslim presence in Belgium today. When it comes to the daily lives of Muslims in Belgium, what we see is a unique blend of Islamic tradition and modern Belgian life. It's a balance between faith, family, work, and community, shaped by both religious values and the rhythms of everyday European society. For practicing Muslims, daily life often starts with prayer. The first of 5 prayers, known as Fajr, happens just before sunrise. And throughout the day, Muslims pause to pray, whether at home, at work, or in one of the many mosques or prayer spaces found in cities like Brussels, Antwerp, or Liège. During the holy month of Ramadan, this spiritual rhythm becomes even more central. Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, and when the evening comes, families and friends gather for iftar meals, sharing food and strengthening community ties. Fridays hold a special place as well, with the Jumu'ah prayer bringing large numbers to the mosques for the weekly congregational service. But faith is just one part of the picture. Muslims in Belgium are active across all areas of work and education. First-generation immigrants, many of whom came in the post-war years, often worked in construction, industry, and manual labor. Today, you'll find Muslims running small businesses like bakeries, halal butchers, or grocery stores. And with each new generation, the career paths have widened. Young Muslims are entering public service, healthcare, teaching, and increasingly entrepreneurship in tech. They're opening startups, launching creative projects, and shaping the future of Belgian society. Education is a central part of life too. Most Muslim children attend mainstream Belgian schools, but in some cities, there are also Islamic schools that combine general education with religious classes. And outside the classroom, Muslim youth often engage in sports, especially football, which is incredibly popular, or in community organizations and cultural centers that offer classes, mentoring, and a space to just be themselves. In neighborhoods with large Muslim populations, community life is vibrant. You'll find halal restaurants, family-run cafes, and bustling markets where Arabic, Turkish, or French echo through the streets. Muslim women play a vital role as well, not just in family life, but in education, social work, activism, and local initiatives that make a real impact. But of course, life isn't without its challenges. Many Muslims in Belgium still face discrimination, whether that's subtle, like being passed over for a sham, or more direct, such as being targeted for wearing a hijab. Public debates about secularism and religious expression, like whether headscarves should be allowed in schools or public jobs, continue to shape the experiences of Muslim women in particular. Islamophobia remains a real concern, and navigating between one's religious identity and social acceptance can be difficult, especially for younger generations who are born Belgian, but still treated as other. Geographically, most Muslims in Belgium live in urban, working-class neighborhoods, places where immigrant families first settled and where strong community networks have since formed. The largest Muslim population is in Brussels. Areas like Molenbeek, Schaerbeek, Anderlecht, and Saint-Josse-ten-Noode are home to many Moroccan and Turkish families. These neighborhoods are full of life. Mosques on busy corners, halal shops, Islamic schools, and community centers that act as both spiritual and social anchors. Antwerp is another major hub, particularly in neighborhoods like Borgerhout and Diorne, where the Moroccan and Turkish presence is also strong. Liège has a significant North African community, and cities like Charleroi and Ghent are seeing growing Muslim populations, especially among young people and recent arrivals from places like Syria and Afghanistan. To give you an idea of what a typical day might look like for a Muslim in Belgium, it could start around 6 a.m. with the morning prayer, followed by school or work around 8 o'clock. Around midday, people pause for the Duhur prayer and maybe grab a halal lunch. In the afternoon, it's back to work or school, then home around 5 o'clock for Asr prayer. By 7 it's time for Maghrib prayer and a family dinner. The evening might include a visit to a youth center, a community event, or just time with family. The day usually winds down with the Esha prayer and some quiet reflection before bed. It's a life that balances faith and modernity, tradition and progress, community and individuality. It's not always easy, but for many Muslims in Belgium, it's a life filled with purpose, resilience, and hope for a more inclusive future. Even though Muslims in Belgium contribute a great deal to the country's cultural, economic, and social life, the reality is that they continue to face a wide range of challenges, many of them deeply rooted in history, politics, and societal attitudes. These aren't just isolated problems. They're part of a broader, complex picture that shapes the everyday experiences of Muslim individuals and communities across the country. Discrimination and Islamophobia remain some of the most pressing issues. Many Muslims, especially those who wear visible symbols of their faith, like the hijab, report being treated unfairly in public spaces, in shops, on public transport, or even when trying to access healthcare. In areas like Molenbeek, for example, racial profiling by police has been widely reported, creating feelings of alienation and distrust. And in the media, Muslims are often portrayed through a narrow lens, usually linked to security concerns or social tension, which only reinforces harmful stereotypes. In public discourse, things can get even more difficult. Some far-right or nationalist political parties have made Islam a central issue in their campaigns, portraying Muslims as a threat to Belgian identity or integration. These narratives do real harm. They influence public perception and make life harder for ordinary Muslims who are simply trying to live, work, and contribute to society like everyone else. Education is another area where challenges are deeply felt, especially for young Muslim girls who wear the hijab. In some schools, headscarves are banned altogether, limiting their choices and making them feel excluded. Even when headscarves are allowed, students often face unconscious bias from teachers or administrators. And although more and more Muslim students are enrolling in higher education, they're still underrepresented, particularly in leadership roles or academic positions. The workplace presents its own barriers. Muslim job seekers, especially women who wear the hijab, often find themselves overlooked during hiring processes. Some are even told outright that they need to remove their headscarf if they want a chance at getting the job. A 2020 study revealed that applicants with Muslim-sounding names receive significantly fewer interview invitations compared to their peers. And when they do get jobs, Muslims are often concentrated in lower-paid or manual labor positions, leading to a form of occupational segregation that's hard to break out of. This ties into the broader issue of socioeconomic inequality. Many Muslims live in working-class neighborhoods where unemployment is high and housing conditions can be poor. Areas like Molenbeek in Brussels or Borgerhout in Antwerp are often pointed to as examples. Youth unemployment is especially worrying, significantly higher than the national average, leaving many young Muslims feeling stuck with limited prospects. For many Muslim youth, these challenges create a kind of identity struggle. Born in Belgium, they often feel like they're not seen as fully Belgian, but at the same time they're distant from their parents' country of origin. There's a constant pressure to prove that they belong, especially in the aftermath of events like the 2016 Brussels attacks, when suspicion and stigma intensified. Media and political narratives often treat Muslims as outsiders, even when they have lived in Belgium their entire lives. Political representation is slowly improving, but Muslims remain underrepresented in government and decision-making spaces. Those who do step forward, especially women who wear the hijab, often face hostility or backlash. At the same time, Islamic institutions such as mosque councils have been criticized for being too opaque or influenced by foreign interests, leading to strained relationships with the state and skepticism from the wider public. Religious freedom, in theory, is protected, but in practice, Muslims sometimes find themselves up against legal or societal resistance. Efforts to build new mosques often meet opposition. Halal slaughter has faced growing restrictions, and public expressions of faith, such as religious clothing, are increasingly challenged by a secular model that struggles to make room for visible religion in public life. Another layer to all of this is the issue of radicalization. In the 2010s, Belgium saw the emergence of radical Islamist cells, especially in neighborhoods like Molenbeek. This understandably led to a stronger security response. But for many Muslims, it also meant being unfairly targeted, surveilled, or stigmatized simply for their faith. Some anti-radicalization programs, while well-intentioned, have ended up alienating the very youth they aim to support. But it's not all bleak. In fact, there are signs of real progress and hope. More and more Muslims in Belgium are stepping forward as professionals, creatives, and community leaders. They're building platforms, starting businesses, running NGOs, and using their voices to challenge stereotypes and push for change. Interfaith dialogues, community projects, and grassroots initiatives are helping to bridge divides and create understanding. Despite the obstacles, Belgian Muslims continue to shape the country in countless positive ways, often quietly, often without recognition, but always with resilience. Their story is one of struggle, yes, but also of strength, contribution, and the ongoing effort to build a more inclusive Belgium for everyone. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who want to understand the real stories behind the headline. Islam in Belgium is more than just a statistic or a news topic. It's about people, families, communities, and a future shaped by both diversity and shared values. Let's keep the conversation going. What are your thoughts on the challenges and contributions of Muslims in Belgium? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you want to see more deep dives like this into history, culture, and society, make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious and stay informed.